The man who now runs Midsommer's murder investigations first appeared in the county a decade earlier as a flirtatious gardener, and in Germany, Britain's deadliest villages, air under a completely different name. Nearly 30 years in, Midsomer is still hiding secrets in plain sight.
It's a wonderful book. I'm not surprised it's a bestseller. You should read it.
Fact 1. The new Barnaby wasn't new. When John Nettles retired in 2011, ITV faced the most delicate handover in British detective television, replacing the only lead Midsomer Murders had ever had. Their solution was Neil Dudgeon as DCI John Barnaby, Tom Barnaby's cousin, conveniently also a brilliant detective, conveniently also drawn to England's most murderous county. What most viewers never realised is that Dudgeon had already been to Midsomer. 11 years earlier, in the 2000 episode Garden of Death, he appeared as Daniel Bolt, a gardener with a roving eye and a talent for charming the ladies of the village. The future DCI Barnaby was once a Midsomer suspect in waiting, flirting his way through the flower beds. The changeover itself was engineered with rare care. John Barnaby was introduced while Tom was still in post, arriving as a guest detective in an earlier episode, The Sword of Guillaume, so audiences could meet the cousin before the keys to the county were handed over. By the time Nettles filmed his farewell, his successor was already a familiar face. The show has never made a fuss of it. There was no wink to camera, no explanation of why the county's new detective looked exactly like a gardener from a decade before. Midsomer simply trusted that nobody would notice, and for years, almost nobody did. It is one of the great hidden jokes of the series. In a show famous for killing the same guest actors over and over in different roles, even the lead detective himself is a recycled face. In Midsomer, apparently, nobody stays dead and nobody stays a gardener.
Well, we already know that Gerald Hadley and Max Jennings knew each other in the past. There must have been some sort of feud and it got out of control.
Fact 2. Anthony Horowitz launched it. Before Foyle's War, before the Alex Rider novels, before the James Bond books, Anthony Horowitz had another job. He was the writer who brought Midsomer to the screen. The very first film, The Killings at Badger's Drift, in 1997, was his adaptation of Caroline Graham's novel, and he went on to write several of the early episodes that defined the show's tone. That tone was a deliberate creation. Graham's books were sharp and darkly comic, and Horowitz leaned into the contradiction that became the programme's signature. The prettier the village, the nastier the secrets. The gentle establishing shots of thatched cottages followed by murder most bizarre. That rhythm was built in from the first film. Graham's original novel deserves its own credit. The Killings at Badger's Drift is regularly listed among the finest British crime novels of its era, a genuinely dark, sharply funny book that gave the series far more literary pedigree than its cozy reputation suggests. The show's first and best trick was simply taking that book seriously. Horowitz then left to create something of his own. In 2002, ITV commissioned Foyle's War from him, meaning the same writer stands behind two of the longest-lived British detective dramas of the modern era, one set in wartime Hastings and one in a county where the war has clearly never ended. He remains one of the most successful storytellers Britain has produced, but Midsomer rarely appears in the first line of his biography. It should. The county's entire murderous machinery was assembled in part by the man the industry later trusted with both Poirot and James Bond.
I always used to think that if you loved someone hard enough and for long enough, they wouldn't be able to help loving you back. Well, I've been very foolish.
Fact 3. The books ran out instantly. Midsomer Murders looks like the adaptation of a vast library of novels. It is nothing of the kind. Caroline Graham wrote just 7 Chief Inspector Barnaby books, beginning with The Killings at Badger's Drift in 1987, and the television series burned through them within its first few years. Everything since has been original. Well over 100 films have now been written directly for television, by a rotating team of writers working inside the world Graham invented, but far beyond the stories she told. Viewers who go looking for the novel behind their favourite episode almost always discover there isn't one. Even the county's name has a story attached. Graham is widely said to have borrowed it from Midsomer Norton, a real town in Somerset, lifting the name of a perfectly peaceful place and attaching it to the most dangerous fictional county in Britain. Graham's 7 novels remain in print, and readers who find them meet a Barnaby slightly grumpier and a Troy considerably ruder than television allowed. But the vast majority of Midsomer, the villages, the fetes, the murders, by increasingly improbable means, exists nowhere on any bookshelf. The show outgrew its source almost immediately and never looked back. Fact 4. Germany renamed the show. In Britain, the series is Midsomer Murders. In Germany, where it is one of the most beloved British imports on television, it airs under a different title entirely, Inspector Barnaby. German audiences have followed the county's murders for decades under a name British viewers wouldn't recognise. The retitling says something true about the show abroad. International audiences attach themselves less to the county than to the man, the calm, dry, endlessly patient detective wading through England's strangest villages. Naming the programme after him simply made the appeal official. And the appeal is enormous. Midsomer Murders has been sold to well over 200 countries and territories, making it one of the most widely distributed British programmes ever made. It has devoted audiences from Scandinavia to Australia, many of whom treat the show as a window onto an England of village greens and cream teas with a body count attached. Scandinavia goes further still. In Denmark, the series airs simply as Barnaby No Inspector Required, and its devotion there is legendary, with the show long established as one of the country's favourite foreign programmes. 2 nations, 2 titles, 1 county. However it is renamed, the murders translate perfectly. The export success has a practical consequence back home. It is a large part of why the series has been able to keep filming for nearly 3 decades. Every improbable murder in every picturesque village is, quietly, one of Britain's most successful exports. Fact 5. Dudgeon overtook Nettles. John Nettles seemed irreplaceable. He led Midsomer Murders from the very first film in 1997 until 2011, 14 years and more than 80 feature-length episodes as Tom Barnaby, one of the longest runs any actor has ever had in a British detective drama. When he left, Received Wisdom said the show would follow him within a series or 2. It did not. And, in the quietest possible way, a milestone has since slipped past. Neil Dudgeon has now played his Barnaby for longer, in years, than Nettles played the original. The 2 records now sit side by side. Nettles still holds the episode count. The early years produced more films per series, while Dudgeon holds the calendar, having carried the role from 2011 into a second decade with no sign of stopping. Nettles was characteristically dry about his reasons for going. He pointed out that Tom Barnaby had long since passed the age at which any real detective would have been retired, and that there was something faintly absurd about a pensionable policeman still chasing murderers through orchards. He preferred to leave while the joke was still affectionate. Nettles, appointed OBE shortly before his departure, has always spoken of the show with affection rather than regret. He chose his own exit, something few detectives of his era managed. But the succession he made possible has become the show's greatest trick. Midsomer Murders is now a series that has spent longer without its original star than with him, and barely anyone noticed the handover scene. If you're enjoying this, it would mean a lot if you subscribed. It helps us keep making videos like this one. Just hit that button and you'll never miss a new one. Fact 6. The villages moonlight elsewhere. The picture-perfect villages of Midsomer are real and they lead double lives. The production films across Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire, and its most photogenic locations, have been quietly working for other famous productions for decades. Take Turville, one of the county's most recognisable villages. Midsomer has murdered people there, but the same cottages served as Dibley in The Vicar of Dibley, and the windmill on the hill above the village appeared in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. One tiny Buckinghamshire village has hosted a murderous county, a chaotic parish, and a flying car. Corston, Midsomer's market town, is largely played by Wallingford in Oxfordshire, and Wallingford carries a detective pedigree all of its own. It was the hometown of Agatha Christie, who lived there for more than 40 years and is buried in a churchyard nearby. The town that stages Barnaby's investigations belonged, in real life, to the Queen of Crime herself. The double lives extend across the whole county. The same handful of Chiltern and Thameside villages have been dressed and redressed as dozens of different Midsomer communities over the years, which is why devoted viewers sometimes experience a strange déjà vu, recognizing the green where a completely different murder took place 3 series earlier. The locations are now a tourist industry. Official Midsomer Murders trails guide visitors, a striking number of them, from Germany and Scandinavia around the villages, pubs and greens, where fictional bodies have been falling since 1997. The county may not exist, but you can spend a very pleasant weekend being shown around it. Fact 7. Death by cheese. Somewhere in its long run, Midsomer Murders made a decision that changed its identity. If the county was going to have this many murders, the murders had better be memorable. Ordinary shootings and stabbings gave way to something closer to competitive art. The most famous example remains the victim crushed beneath a giant round of cheese, a death so gloriously improbable that it is still cited whenever the show is discussed. Around it stands a gallery of kills involving farm machinery, sporting equipment, vintage curiosities, and the more dangerous contents of the English country pantry. The bizarre methods serve a real dramatic purpose. They keep a nearly 30-year-old format surprising. They give every episode a puzzle beyond whodunit. How, exactly, does one arrange that? And they signal to the audience that Midsomer knows precisely what it is. The show discovered early that it could be sinister and funny in the same breath. The victims' fates have become a genuine part of the show's folklore. Fans trade favourite deaths the way other audiences trade favourite episodes, and newspapers have compiled entire rankings of the county's most inventive ends. No other mainstream drama has ever made its murder methods a beloved feature in their own right. It is a tightrope few dramas could walk this long. Play the deaths entirely straight and the county becomes grim. Play them entirely for laughs and the mystery collapses. Midsomer's writers have balanced on that line for hundreds of murders, and the cheese, for the record, was never topped. Fact 8. The Sergeant conveyor belt. While the Barnabys have changed only once, the passenger seat of the county's unmarked car has been a revolving door. A parade of sergeants has served Midsomer over the decades, and the handovers are one of the show's quiet renewal tricks, giving each era its own double act. The first and most beloved was Gavin Troy, played by Daniel Casey, eager, tactless, and the owner of a running joke the show never explained too loudly, his driving, which regularly left Tom Barnaby gripping the door handle in silent prayer through the lanes of England's most dangerous county. The sergeants matter more than they first appear. Each one recalibrates the show's chemistry, the skeptic, the enthusiast, the ambitious newcomer, and gives Barnaby someone new to explain the county to, which is really a way of reintroducing Midsomer to the audience all over again. It is quiet renewal, hidden inside a job change. After Troy came Dan Scott, then the longest-serving of them all, Jason Hughes as Ben Jones, who spent 8 years rising through the ranks at Barnaby's side and became, for a generation of viewers, the definitive Midsomer Sergeant. And one sergeant went on to genuine world fame. Gwilym Lee, who played the impeccably turned-out Charlie Nelson, left the county and re-emerged in Hollywood as Brian May in Bohemian Rhapsody, trading Corsten CID for Queen. And a warrant card for one of the most famous heads of hair in rock history. Fact 9. Sykes stole the show. When John Barnaby arrived in 2011, he brought something no Midsomer detective had had before: a dog. Sykes, a small, scruffy terrier with impeccable comic timing, padded into the series and promptly became one of its most popular cast members. He earned his place quickly. Directors learned that a single reaction shot of Sykes, a tilted head at a suspect, a weary sigh during a briefing at the kitchen table could get a bigger response than a page of dialogue, and the scripts began writing to his strengths. Sykes was no amateur. He was already a seasoned screen professional with a string of credits across British film and television before Midsomer a genuine animal actor whose trainer could cue him to bark, sulk, or stare at exactly the right moment. Cast and crew spoke about him like a colleague because that is effectively what he was. Many viewers had, in fact, seen him before without knowing it. Sykes was the dog behind Harvey, the star of a run of celebrated television adverts, which meant Midsommer's new arrival was already one of the most recognizable dogs on British screens before he ever set paw in the Barnaby kitchen. His scenes gave the show a register it had never quite had: domestic warmth. The Barnaby kitchen, with Sykes eyeing the sausages, became the calm harbour between murders, a running reassurance that whatever happened in the villages, home remained intact. When Sykes retired after years of service, the role passed to a successor, Paddy, continuing what is now a Midsomer institution. The county has buried hundreds of victims, but its detectives' dogs are untouchable. Even Midsomer has lines it will not cross. Fact 10. It inherited Morse's format. Midsomer Murders owes its shape to another detective entirely. The 2-hour, feature-length format, unhurried, novelistic, a complete film every episode, was the television revolution fought for by Inspector Morse in 1987. 10 years later, Midsomer adopted the format wholesale and built its county inside it. The inheritance runs deeper than running time. Like Morse, Midsomer trusted its audience with slow beginnings, large casts of suspects and solutions that arrive at their own pace. The format rewards exactly the kind of attentive, patient viewing that Sunday evenings were made for, and it is no accident that both shows became Sunday institutions. But the pupil has long since outlasted the master. Morse ran for 13 years. Its successor, Lewis, managed 9 more. Midsomer Murders, which borrowed their format and was never considered their equal in prestige, has now been in production for nearly 30 years, outliving both, along with almost every drama that launched beside it in 1997. Longevity on this scale changes what a program is. Midsomer Murders is no longer merely a detective show. It is a fixed point that entire generations have grown up with, handed down from parents to children like a family recipe. Episodes made a quarter of a century apart sit beside each other in the schedules and somehow belong to the same world. That may be the biggest secret of all. The show critics filed under cozy escapism quietly became one of the most durable programs in the history of British television, still filming, still selling around the world, and still finding new ways to commit murder in the most beautiful county in England.